What's going on, everyone? My name is Mr. Rage22. Welcome back to my channel. I'm very excited to be making this video because this is a game that I have really been wanting to talk about on my channel one more time, because not only is this quite possibly one of the greatest psychological horror games ever made, but unfortunately this is also another very underrated game, just like the last game we covered, which was Outlast 2. And something I realized is it's a shame that such amazing games just either slip under the radar or just get so much undeserved criticism from people who just were looking at that game in the totally wrong way. And it's okay to not like a game, but seriously, like, some criticisms are just ridiculous. Like, they're so bizarre, just so stupid that they make you think, really, that's why you don't like this game? Really, that's your reason for not liking such a great game? So, yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to force anyone. I'm not trying to force my own opinions on anyone, but seriously, this game is underrated as hell. And the reason why I wanted to bring this game back on my channel to, cover it, even though I've already reviewed it, is because this game is it's one of the most important horror games I've played this year alone. Besides Visage, besides Madison, besides Outlast 2, this was one of the most important psychological horror games I've played this year. And actually, I do have a fine history with this game, but still, I just want to talk about this game one last time. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. Observer is a very, very dark and twisted cyberpunk horror game, and the cyberpunk element just makes it all the more better. Honestly, this game is better than the actual Cyberpunk 2077, because first of all, this game has a much better story and much better gameplay because, of course, it's a horror game. Horror games are awesome. And second, it's not filled with bugs and glitches and doesn't crash every 5 minutes. So, this already makes it better than the actual Cyberpunk 2077 game. One thing I quickly want to talk about, and one thing I want to talk about right off the bat, is how this game actually uses psychological horror. It's very, very easy to just make a generic psychological horror game. You just have, scary things happening around the player and, show the player scary things that's supposed to get under their skin. And most of the time, developers just try too hard when actually trying to use psychological horror. But the thing that's so amazing about Observer is not only does this game use psychological horror in such an amazing way, but it is so effective in how it actually uses those psychological elements, because this game's psychological moments, which is of course 90% of the game, are straight fucked up. This game's psychological moments will not only get under your skin, but they will burrow their way into your head and they will mind fuck the shit out of you. Excuse my bad language, but still, like, I don't know, there's no other way to describe how this game just fucks with your head. This is the best when it comes to psychological horror, because this game's psychological segments, not only are they downright terrifying and bizarre and just freak you out, but they're actually uncomfortable to go through. And it's even worse because of how immersive the game is. Like, this game's graphics are also insane. So the psychological moments, not only do they fuck with your head, but you feel like you are actually experiencing the actual madness and insanity that this game is providing. And this is what makes this game such a terrifying psychological thriller. And not only that, but how this game's psychological moments happen is it's not by anything supernatural. This game uses psychological horror in not only a good way, but its purpose, the purpose of you seeing these psychological moments, is also terrifying. You are basically playing as a guy, the protagonist, Daniel Zarsky. You're playing as a guy who could basically hack into people's minds and experience their thoughts and experience what's inside their head. And the human mind is a very strange place to be in. It's a very strange thing in general. The human mind is also a very powerful but very terrifying thing. And that's pretty much what this game is. This game literally allows you to tap in and see what is inside the mind of someone who is basically losing it. It allows you to experience firsthand what happens when you peel away the layers of sanity and what is behind the darkest corners of our mind, those corners of our mind that we don't wish to actually let out, the ones that we bury with our sanity. But what happens when that sanity is peeled away? What happens when our sanity is peeled away and those dark corners of our mind now becomes our mind in general and our sanity is gone? That's exactly what this game does, and it lets us experience that with its psychological segments. And like I said before, this game's psychological segments, they're beyond terrifying. They're not just, scary where, things start moving around on their own, or, doors start opening and closing, or you're just seeing, like, weird shit. It's not just that. It's so much more than that. This game's psychological moments are not only bizarre to the point where they become uncomfortable and just make you question what the hell is even happening? What the hell am I playing? What's happening here? But those moments is also the reason why this game just pulls off psychological horror so much, because in my personal opinion, this is how psychological horror should work. Psychological horror should not only fuck with the player's mind, but it should be the very thing that terrifies them. Not using ghosts and demons and psycho slashers, but just using ourselves to scare us, using our own minds to scare us by showing us what happens when our sanity is peeled away and what happens when you start to lose your mind. That's what is so good about this game, and that's what makes its psychological segments so terrifying. If you have played this game, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because I'm sure if you haven't played this game, you're probably wondering, like, how terrifying could this game's psychological moments be? Well, if I had to describe them, I would have to describe them as bizarre, terrifying, and downright uncomfortable, because not only are this game's psychological segments just so bizarre to the point where they become terrifying and uncomfortable, but the actual imagery of the game is downright horrifying as well. Like, seriously, some of the things you see in this game is beyond terrifying. It almost makes you want to stop playing. That's how terrifying some of this game's imagery is. And that's another great thing about this game. This game not only nails psychological horror in such a great way, but it also shows that you don't need jump scares to have a good horror game. Visual horror is better than just a loud noise, because if you show the player something so terrifying that it makes them just stop for a second and just look at and realize what they're looking at is actually real, or when they realize what they're looking at is so terrifying that it just makes their heart stop for a second, that will stay in their heads long after they've played the game. You show the player, or even with a horror movie, when you show the audience something terrifying, so terrifying, it's going to stay in their minds. That's going to follow them in their sleep. And that's one of the other great things that Observer manages to do. Not only are the psychological moments downright terrifying and just downright mind fucking, but this game's imagery is also terrifying as well. Another thing I quickly want to talk about real quick is the actual gameplay. So besides the game's psychological moments, which are, yes, the best part of the game, another really good cheeky part of the game is the actual gameplay. Like, basically, this game, it's almost kind of like a mini open world game, because you could basically freely explore this giant ass apartment building. And not only that, but the game also has like these little side cases, and this also adds variety into the game as well, because now that the game has side cases which are completely optional, and you as the player having the option to do these side cases whenever you wish, this also adds in a lot more variety to the game. Do you want to stick to just doing the main quest, or do you want to explore and do some side quests? And not only that, but the side quests are also very, very good, and it also adds to the game's psychological scares, because the side quests, of course, provide more psychological moments and more psychological segments. And I can gladly confirm, that yes, all of this game's psychological segments do exactly what a great psychological horror game does, and that is just fucking with the player's mind and terrifying the shit out of them and just freaking the player out, because that is exactly what this game's psychological segments do, all of them. And I also love how the psychological segments are actually different from each other. A couple examples is, in one psychological segment, you're basically inside of an office building, and you just see all these people just tirelessly working at their desk, and it's really freaky too, because, like, at another part of the game, then they're all like dancing around and shit for some reason. Like it's really bizarre as well. And again, this is how a psychological horror game should work. Another great thing about this game that I quickly want to say is part of its actual variety, because not only is Observer a great psychological game, but it's also got a couple of survival horror elements as well. There's a moment in this game where you are being chased by some kind of giant cyber demon monster or some shit. He's like a cyber monster. Your character doesn't run very fast, so it makes it even more terrifying. It's more of a stealth section than an actual, like, chase sequence. But again, another little quick praise for the game. In terms of criticism, I honestly can't think of any. Like, seriously, this is a perfect game, and because it does so many things right. So yes, every game has some criticisms and some things wrong with it. And while this game does have those things, this game, let me just say, this game does 90% right, 10% bad. Okay, so that's what this game does. It does more good than bad, which obviously is why it is such a good game. And that's what every good game is. Okay, there's no such thing as a perfect game. Okay, even good games could have problems, and but it's still a good game. And this is one of those games. Observer, one of the best psychological horror games ever made. Now back to the actual that part of the gameplay that I was telling you guys about. I got a little mixed up there. Yes, the game has side cases, which are completely optional, but another thing I like is the actual exploration. The exploration in this game is absolutely amazing, and it makes the game so much more immersive. I cannot stand it when a game basically controls how the player moves and where they're supposed to go. Like, the player is basically forced to go where the developers want them to go. But no, this game is very immersive because you could freely explore this game's environments and the building in general that you're in, which makes the game so much more immersive. And not only that, but there's also collectibles as well, which actually not only gives this gives more actual reasons to explore the building, because obviously you have to explore the building to find side cases, for more of those amazing psychological moments. But now there's also little collectibles that you can find while exploring. So again, another great part of the game. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the story. Observer's story is almost as dark and twisted as its psychological moments. This game's story is tragic, dark, and absolutely terrifying, because the reality of this game is one that is actually not too different from our own reality. Basically, the game's story is there is this corrupt company called Chiron that basically used a war to basically take control of people. And I'm not, I'm not gonna spoil it. I'm not gonna spoil it. You need to experience this game story for yourself. But all I could say is that when you realize how accurate this game depicts some really fucked up things, those same things that are in actual, real life, it makes the game all the more terrifying. It also proves just how good Blooper Team is at writing a good story. And not only that, but Blooper Team is so underrated. This game alone proves that Blooper Team could probably pull off a really, really good Silent Hill remake, because not only does this game nail great psychological horror, really decent survival horror, but let's be honest, the psychological moments is what makes this game as amazing as it is. I've already said this 50 times before. This game's psychological moments is what makes this game alone a 10 out of 10. This game's psychological moments are terrifying, downright uncomfortable, bizarre, and they will freak you out. They will freak you out because the things that this game's psychological moments will show you, they will get under your skin and they will fuck your head up. So, obviously, yes, the psychological moments is what makes this game so good, but so does the story. The story is very, very good, but like I said, I'm not going to spoil it for you guys, because the story, you need to experience the story. Another thing that's also really good are the actual characters. The characters that you actually interact with in this game, both from side quests and from actually just talking to the residents that are inside the apartment building that you're in, it adds so much more variety with the characters. And I almost forgot, there's like a little mini game in Observer where you could basically talk to the residents of the people. And one other thing I quickly want to talk about is the actual people in the game. Observer takes place in a very, very dark reality where people are basically suffering more than you could ever imagine. People are miserable and people are dying, and that's one of the more fucked up things you experience in this game. Besides the psychological moments that will just downright terrify you and just make you uncomfortable and freak you out, this game will also probably make you kind of sad in some cases as well. Because when you actually interact with the people in this game, you feel just how sad they are. You could hear it in their voice. The voice acting is really good as well. It makes it all the more immersive, and that also goes back to the story. It makes you realize just how tragic and dark this game's story really is, and it adds to how great the game is in general. Another thing I want to talk about is this game's soundtrack. Holy shit. This game's soundtrack is it's one of the greatest soundtracks I've heard in a horror game. It adds to those psychological moments. When you hear this game's fucked up soundtrack in one of the more terrifying psychological moments, it's enough to make you want to stop playing the game because of how scary it is. Honestly, if you guys do not have a good fear tolerance, you might just have a heart attack playing this game. Either a heart attack or a panic attack. Or you might actually lose your sanity in real life, because it's like that's what this game is trying to do. Because this game's psychological moments are so horrifying and downright uncomfortable. It's like this game is trying to make you lose your sanity in real life. It's trying to make you question yourself. It's trying to make you question yourself, honestly. And like that's what this game does with its psychological moments, because of how bizarre and terrifying they are. That's the point of the game. That's the point of a psychological horror game, and that's why this game is such an amazing psychological horror game. This is the greatest psychological horror game ever made, and I don't care what anyone says. It is my opinion, and at this point, it's not even opinion. This is a fact. No other psychological horror game manages to do what Observer has done, because this game's psychological horror works at its finest. This is psychological horror at its finest because it does exactly what it's supposed to do. It uses horror to fuck with your head, and it makes you uncomfortable because the human mind is so delicate, and this game fucks with that with its horrifying and downright uncomfortable psychological moments, and that is what makes it such an amazing psychological game. So other than that, guys, that's it. Observer is a fine game. Great characters, an amazing story, fantastic psychological horror, and just a great horror game in general with some great visuals and some very good graphics. Observer, fantastic game. Definitely check this one out, guys. The game retails at around $30 on Xbox, and same price on PlayStation, but hey, you can't put a price on greatness, especially if you are a horror fan. If you are a horror fan, this is the game for you. So yeah, guys, check out Observer, one of the most underrated and one of the greatest psychological horror games ever made. And not only that, but one thing I forgot to say is the protagonist is voiced by Rutger Hauer, a legend in filming. And if you don't know who Rutger Hauer is, then honestly, you need to rethink your life if you don't know who Rutger Hauer is. Okay? If you haven't watched Blade Runner, then yeah, you really need to rethink things, honestly. So yeah. Anyways, guys, thank you so very much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed. I'm really enjoying doing these little discussion videos for these horror games. Just talking about how great these horror games are. I'm really enjoying doing it for you guys. We need more horror content on this channel because, obviously I am the biggest horror fan in the world. So yeah. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Check out Observer, the year is 2084, not too far away. So yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you stuck by to the end, you heard me rambling on for all this time. Thank you so much for actually sticking by, and I really appreciate you guys. So yeah, be sure to like and subscribe if you can. If you're enjoying this content, please do. Really helps the channel out. And yeah, this was Mr. Rage 22 signing off. Bye bye, guys, and have a good one.